"They treat us like pests," remarked an El Salvadoran man attempting to get health care in the Washington, D.C. area in 2012. That the medical systems treat immigrants as if they were insects derives from a long history of disinfection plants at the U.S.-Mexico border to delouse people as they came to the United States to work beginning in 1917. This kind of material condition proliferated immigrant pest metaphors that, centering in eugenics discourse, upheld white supremacy and xenophobia, the effects of which are still felt today. These genealogies link to political rhetoric around the U.S.-Mexico border from 2010 to the present day, specifically by American Republican politicians. On June 19, 2018, at 9:52 a.m., President Donald J. Trump typed, "Democrats are the problem. They don't care about crime and want illegal immigrants, no matter how bad they may be, to pour into and infest our country like MS-13. They can't win on their terrible policies, so they view them as potential voters." While the constant negative and prejudicial rhetoric that escapes Trump's mouth or fingers serves as a prop with which to build evidence as to why his ever-unfolding plan to build a border wall is necessary, this kind of inflammatory language is commonplace on the American public stage. Steve King, the Republican U.S. representative from Iowa since 2003, Curry Todd, a Republican member of the Tennessee House of Representatives, and Ken Cuccinelli, the former Republican Attorney General for Virginia, for example, have relied on pest logics to further a white supremacist and nativist view on immigration politics. In 2010, rising tensions over securing the border included the attempted development of a bipartisan immigration reform bill, as well as a Senate re-election campaign by John McCain, a Republican from Arizona, that proclaimed,
"Complete the dang fence."
In June of that year, Arizona put into law an aggressive immigration reform bill, which was then overturned by the Supreme Court. During a Tea Party rally in Arizona, Steve King called up a speech he had made in front of the U.S. House of Representatives in 2006, where he showed a model of an electrified border wall, stating how the wire he proposed to keep immigrants from coming into the country was the same used to discourage livestock. King stated, "I told Karl Rove one day, we were having this discussion. I said, 'Karl, if you give me $6 million a mile, there will not be a cockroach that will get across my mile. I guarantee it.'" King's reference to cockroach develops from a long history of equating Mexicans and other Latin Americans to cockroaches. In a strange reversal, King has also likened illegal immigration to a slow-motion Holocaust that acts as a slow-rolling, slow-motion terrorist attack on the United States. With the parallel histories of Zyklon B at the U.S.-Mexico border and at German concentration camps, in addition to how Germans called Jews cockroaches to justify their mass murder, this speech is both ironic and troubling. These statements point to lingering fears based in racist and xenophobic desires to protect white America from miscegenation, loss of jobs, and any kind of disruption to white cultural and political hegemony. The statement that literally there needs to be a wall to protect white Americans from the infestation proves to be an impossibility for both economic and environmental reasons, as evidenced in Trump's backpedaling in his description of how the wall will look. Furthermore, those who live in cities and tropical climates with ample cockroaches around know how a wall is not a hindrance to the ability of a roach to enter the home, thus making this erroneous comparison that much more wrong. In September of 2010, Democratic Senators Bob Menendez of New Jersey and Patrick Leahy of Vermont introduced the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act of 2010 to the Senate. This sparked public debate, which created retaliation in conservatives for specifically designating that families will not be separated, and also that pathways to citizenship will be attainable for certain border crossers. In November, Curry Todd had a public conversation with a panel of prenatal health care officials about how to ensure that pregnant women about to give birth in U.S. hospitals were U.S. citizens. Todd expressed distaste for the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which gives citizenship to all babies who are born in the United States. After a panel stated to him that requiring citizenship verification to pregnant women in the hospital was unnecessary, considering all of the children were born citizens, Todd stated that female undocumented immigrants,
We go out there like rats and multiply then, I guess.
although he later apologized for making this rat comparison, he admits to the original sentiment by regretting that he didn't call them anchor babies instead. This targeting of female immigrants, specifically calling up their ability to give birth to American citizens, correlated to female rats whose reproductive habits are seen as an aggressive public nuisance with the ability to make humans sick. All of this ties into the history of sanitation stations at the U.S.-Mexico border to ensure that typhoid lice were unable to cross the border along with other humans. In 2012, the immigrant family was called into question again as Ken Cuccinelli compared families of immigrants to families of rats and raccoons. In fact, Cuccinelli lumped immigration together with the Washington, D.C. Wildlife Protection Act of 2010 on conservative talk show The Morning Majority. At the time, there had been an explosion of rats seen at two occupied D.C. encampments, which sat at McPherson Square and Freedom Plaza, two locations overseen by the National Park Service. Mohammed N. Akhtar, the director of DC's Department of Health, who has visited Middle Eastern and African refugee camps, suggested the conditions at Occupy were similar, thus playing with the fearful rhetoric of the racialized other ready to invade. This sets the stage for when Cuccinelli makes this pest immigrant correlation.
AM 630. We're going to go to Larry Kudlow in just a moment, but standing by on the line, just called in for a moment, is Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General of the United States of the great Commonwealth of Virginia, who knows a thing or two apparently about rats. What is it that you know about rats that the rest of us don't know?
Well, I saw the same rat story about D.C. as you all have been talking about. What you may not know is last year, in its finite wisdom, the D.C. City Council passed a new law, a triumph of animal rights over human health, where those pest control people you suggested they bring in aren't allowed to kill the rat.
No.
They have to relocate the rat. And not only that, that's actually not the worst part. They cannot break up the family of the rat.
Oh, no.
Now, as actual experts in pest control will tell you, if you don't move an animal about 25 miles, it'll come back.
Yeah.
And so what's the solution to that? Well, cross a river.
Yeah. Send him over to Virginia. That's right.
So now guess why I care about that sort of thing.
I bet.
So anyway, it is worse than our immigration policy. You can't break up rat families.
All right.
Or raccoons and all the rest, and you can't even kill them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
The act in question has particular stipulations that wildlife does not include domestic animals, invertebrates, fish, nor commensal rodents. Therefore, the pro-animal policy does not, in fact, offer any protection to rats. Martin Ostermuelle questions whether Cuccinelli's comparison implies that Cuccinelli wants to actually kill all immigrants. And the river reference undoubtedly refers to the Rio Grande and deportation of undocumented immigrants. This conflation of rats and immigrants is especially troubling in light of the genealogy of genocidal rhetoric deriving from the history of eugenics-led immigration policy developed in the United States and appropriated by Nazis to create the Great Extermination. As of June 2019, Cuccinelli serves as the acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Protests on June 30, 2018 across the United States in 750 cities brought resistance to the recent media circus that made visible 2,300 family separations at the U.S.-Mexico border in the weeks leading up to the event. I participated in the New York City protest in Foley Square amongst the general feeling of many who were exhausted by the present administration's desire to keep dissenters paralyzed, powerless, and paranoid. Amidst the crowd, I saw a pink protest sign that read, "If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito." What this brought up for me was the notion that as bodies in the street protesting the government's actions towards those who have been rhetorically, materially, and effectively linked to pest animals, that as protesters we can actually think of ourselves as pests on purpose. Pests that are able to infest the world with good instead of evil by taking micro actions on a daily basis, through conversation, social media postings, joining with other bodies in space, fighting for diversity and inclusion in the workplace, making art. All these acts build up to one giant and unmanageable infestation that can overwhelm the hate speech set forth by Trump, his advisors, and other politicians who use rhetoric and infrastructure to make marginalized communities and individuals victims of environmental injustice. Based on these examples, I wrote the following poem. You came here to live in the shadows amongst the drops of rain that commingle on branches in the morning. You came here, thirsty, in the shadows of ships, slave ships even, hitching a ride from the west coast of Africa to the southern United States. You came here in the shadows of trade routes, thirsty, from China to Europe in the Middle Ages. You scurried here last week from Mexico, across the desert, thirsty, thirsty. Thirsty, you came here to live in the shadows. You didn't come here thirsty with an expectation that you would demand a path to citizenship. You will eat all my food or spoil it with your little leg hairs and shit. I leave droplets of water for you. Angels and ranchers leave buckets of water. No matter what I do, your thirst drives you to penetrate the wall through cracks, crevices, and weak links. You are rapists penetrating my home, the ears and eyes of my children. You can go out there like rats and multiply, making your own children, playing with mine. You operate in the dark. You come across the borders like rats and roaches in the woodpile, like rats and roaches in the stowage of ships, stowaways, on boats and rafts and swimming. The reason you are so bad now, they believe, is because of the warm winters. They think we've got to get control. They think that's what we need to know. They think that you are a monster created to slay at the end of the day. They want to kill the rat and break up the families of the rat. They don't want you to come back. They don't want to let you use their deodorant, or drink their water, or sleep in their beds. They say you don't belong in their house. They say they don't even have to kill you, just use e-verification of citizenship, that you will find the conditions so intolerable that you will head back to the nest. They say you are just a little bigger than a grasshopper, that you'll scatter and then they'll be able to catch you. Securing our borders is just like securing our homes. A border with no fence is like a house with no doors, where you can just come and go as you please. I left you water last night, too. I don't want you to die in the desert. They say they will build a wall, but there are already walls. Humans have built walls around their homes, states, countries to keep pests like you out since the beginning of time, and you have always penetrated them, always came in, uninvited. Your thirst drove you. No matter what I do, no matter what I do, you always come in, swarms and infestations. And no matter what I do, you always come in. You never give up. You rise up, thirsty. You climb over my wall. You climb over my wall, thirsty. 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 You climb over my wall, thirsty.